House to Home, presented by Remax Diamond Realty.
Off a day, everybody. It is Tuesday. That means it's time to talk real estate, and I have two of the women that I trust and value and whose opinions and judgment I can't wait to hear from each and every time this week. Liz and Gina from Remax Diamond Realty, Guam. Ladies, half a day.
Half a day, Jason.
Okay, you've been picking the topics a lot this week and this month, and there have been some fascinating topics, but one thing that I was curious about is how the short-term rental market on Guam has been affected, especially over the last year and a half, what with the pandemic. Because I know I've talked to you in the past and you said, people have a tendency to say, I'm going to rent out a condo for a few months because I'm building a house, or, some people with a lot of money just say like, let's go stay somewhere else because we can afford to. But how thriving, for lack of a better term, is short-term rentals as a business on Guam?
Well, your rentals normally are a minimum of 1 year lease. Periodically and more frequently now, we're getting inquiries for short-term rentals. Buyers are looking to rent for 2-3 months until they find the perfect home for them to purchase, or they just arrive and they want to make a decision on whether to rent or buy. So they want to assess the market to figure out where are they most comfortable with in terms of neighborhoods, in terms of location. So we're getting a lot of those inquiries right now. The only problem is finding the right property that will do short-term rentals, because the majority of the landlords want a minimum of 1 year leases. Mm-hmm. So what normally happens, so for example, Jason, if you owned a rental property and you normally get $2,200 a month for your property, what landlords sometimes will evaluate if they're willing to do this. Number one, there's a number of expenses associated with the rental property for short term. So normally they would raise the rent. Instead of your $2,200, they would probably ask for $2,500 or $2,600 a month. And on top of that, the tenant will have to go have power installed under their name. So there's logistics that the tenant would have to handle. So if they move out in 3 months, what happens for you as the landlord, then you have to get the unit ready again to place it on the market for another minimum of 1 year lease. So there's additional expenses. In some cases, the landlord will say, okay, I will charge $3,000, for example, but it's inclusive of power and water. And so that the tenant doesn't have to run around to get that handled. But then they normally place a cap on the power.
Do we see that a lot with our friends in the military, where, you basically have like a fully furnished, utilities, internet and everything, like all inclusive and everything, because they know, you're transient. You're not going to be here for a very long time.
Well, there's a few that do that, but most of them, they do have an allowance. So most of them will transfer power and water. Otherwise, if they make it all inclusive, they lose the power allowance and they lose the water allowance. So many of them would rather just connect it so they don't lose their utility allowance if they're military.
Mm-hmm. Gina, how much of your current business, because, you guys get inquiries, from everything all under the sun, from, can my property be assessed, whatever. And do people come to you specifically for rental properties with the knowledge that, it's going to be for a finite number of days, if not months?
Most of our rental activity, Jace, is long-term.
Mm-hmm.
But when we have customers that are new to the island and looking to buy, they have on occasions requested that they stay somewhere temporary. So that really, that market, before we had Airbnb units that can accommodate people in that situation. I mean, that market, I don't even know what's happened to that market. I mean, I'm sure there's still landlords out there that were set up for that kind of activity, but we don't see a lot of that market anymore. We just don't have that many units that target that.
Is that also because of the decline of the tourism market? Because from what I understand, like a lot of the Airbnb clientele were our Russian visitors.
And not just Russian visitors. I had a lot of, local local families that were returning to Guam that didn't want to stay with family members, but instead wanted to stay at these Airbnbs. So they have their own place. It was a cheaper alternative to hotels. But where this fits in with our the people that use the realtors, right, is usually we run into this when people are looking to purchase. They want a permanent home and need something temporary. We have some customers that call because maybe they're getting ready to do major renovation on their home. I had a gentleman recently who rented a place from us. It started off as a 6-month lease because he was building, and I think it was in there almost 2 years. And he was actually building a home. And so, you know, we do come across that. We try to fill in the need where we can. But as Liz mentioned, a lot of our owners, there is a cost to them to get these units rented out. And I don't care if the tenant is like the best tenant in the world. When somebody moves out, there's always something that needs to get done. And with the cost of, with the rising cost of getting people to do any kind of work, anything from cleaning to painting, you name it, the labor cost here has gone up so much. And so landlords now, you know, the short-term rental, they're really hesitant. It's like, can't you find me a long-term tenant, get them in there, and hopefully they could stay for a few years. That's really what they're looking for. So it's gotten harder and harder to bridge the gap with people who are looking to build and just want something temporarily, or they're looking to buy and really need something temporary. Because I mean, you probably decide on something within the next 6 months. The landlords are looking for more long-term. And like Liz explained, you're going to end up paying a little bit more because you want short-term.
Okay, we've talked on this show before about people doing lease to own, and if by some strange reason people like, they say, okay, I'm gonna lease a condo or an apartment, and they find out, you know, my kids really love it here, it's wonderfully located, I'm close to everything, we really feel like this is our home, and then they begin to work it out with their landlord and say, can we make a deal, I'd like to get this. How many transactions do we see where somebody has the intent of going short term, but maybe like Liz, you were saying, and the person's in there for a very long time, and they just like, and now you've got to do like a regular lease and everything? I mean,
we've had a number of those, but it's misconstrued. A lot of people, the calls we get, Gina and I get, are like, can I rent to own? And the misconception is, oh, I rent, I pay $1,000 or $1,200 a month, and then I end up owning it within a number of years. The term we use is lease with option to purchase. And normally when we do go that route, you have to have option money up front. For example, if you wanted to do a lease with option to purchase, you put down $10,000, for example, that's your option money. The price of the property is firm. So for example, if it's $200,000 and you put $10,000 down, of course that's subtracted, it's applied towards the purchase. And let's say you rent the house for 2 years. So the price is firm, you put down $10,000, your rent, for example, is $1,500 a month. So the question is, depending on the landlord, how much of that $1,500 a month is going to be applied towards your purchase price? So for example, if they say half of that is applied towards the purchase price, well, at the end of the 2-year window, prior to the end of the 2-year window, they'll apply, you'll run to the bank, get your loan, pay the balance, which would be the amount less the $10,000 you put in. The half of the $1,500 would be applied, and then the balance you'd have to get your loan. But you have to close your purchase within that 2-year window. So you go to the bank, they go through the appraisal process, you close, you own it. Now, if you fail to complete that period and you default and you decide, well, I don't want to buy it, $10,000 is non-refundable. Any credits that you gain during that 2-year window is non-refundable. It's all red. So usually, again, when we get these type of calls, we explain this to the potential tenant/buyer.
Okay, final question, Gina, we got about a minute left, but if I am in one of those, you know, rent with option to own agreements, or like, let's say arrangements, do I have the peace of mind that I have right of first refusal if, say, somebody goes to my landlord and they're just like, look, I want to live in Tumon. Here's 50 grand in cash up front and everything like that. Whoever your tenant is, just like clear them out.
You know, so right of first refusal and option to purchase are two distinct features.
Okay. I just want to make sure like I can have my place.
Well,
Somebody
right
won't like outgun me.
Right of first refusal is a seller's commitment. Let's say you've expressed an interest in a property and I say, hey, Jace, don't worry. If I ever sell my home, if I find a buyer who's willing to pay me $300,000, I'll come to you and say, hey, Jace, I promised you that if I sell my home, I'm going to come to you. So I have this buyer. I like their offer. It's at the terms that I'm willing to accept, but you have first right of refusal.
Right.
So are you willing to match or beat this offer? And if you are, it goes to you. I already told these buyers that it goes to you. I offered you that.
So that is a standard part of those kind of arrangements.
It has occurred, but in this market, even lease with option to purchase, in this current atmosphere that we've been in for about a year, it's a seller's market. I just had a situation where the seller had negotiated with somebody prior to listing with me, and that was what he put on the table. Gina, I want this person to have first right of refusal. So if you market the property and let's say we get 10 offers and I'm willing to accept one of those offers, you go back to my friend and you say, hey friend, the seller agreed to give you first right of refusal. Here's the deal. Are you willing to match it? So yeah, it comes up. What I think right now is an impossibility are the lease with option to purchase. Because sellers are getting more than what they're asking if it's priced reasonably and under a certain price range. They're getting more than what they're asking. So lease with option becomes, honestly, it's a dead animal right now until the market drops and sellers are unable to sell their homes. Then they might start entertaining that again. But the thing is, if I need my money, and that's why I said I want to sell, why would I agree to wait a year or 2 or 3 or whatever? I wouldn't want to wait because I know I could get more right now in today's market.
Well, I guess even given the state of the world and given the state of the economy here on the island, just do things the traditional way. Go to your favorite realtor. These two are mine. They're going to set you up and get you the best possible deal and the best bang for your buck, because that's what they're here for.
Yes.
All right. So ladies, thank you so much. And we are out of time. Thank you so much for watching KUAM. Ladies, have a wonderful week.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.